A husband's betrayal, a wife's resilience, and a revelation that changes everything. What began as a love story turns into a fight for survival and for truth. Join us as we unravel this gripping tale of heartbreak, redemption, and the strength to rebuild. Welcome to the True Crime Studio. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more stories that inspire and amaze.
Laura Davidson stared at her phone screen, reading the message for the 100th time. Her hands trembled as she sat in her pristine suburban kitchen in Boston, the morning sunlight casting shadows across the granite countertop. At 28 weeks pregnant, she should have been focusing on nursery colors and baby names. Instead, her world was crumbling around her. The message was from Olivia Peterson, a colleague at Marco's law firm. "I'm so sorry, Laura. I thought you knew about Marco and Rebecca. I can't keep quiet anymore, especially with your baby coming." Laura's free hand instinctively moved to her swollen belly, protecting the daughter growing within. The breakfast. Dishes from earlier sat unwashed in the sink, the last normal morning she would ever have in this house. The memory of Marco kissing her goodbye just hours ago now felt like a cruel joke. The front door clicked open and Marco's footsteps echoed through the hallway. Laura hadn't planned to confront him today, but her body moved on autopilot. Standing in the kitchen doorway, she watched her husband of 5 years remove his suit, jacket, his dark hair perfectly styled, his wedding ring glinting in the light. "You're home early," he said, his smile fading as he noticed her expression. "Is everything okay? The baby? How long?" Laura's voice was barely a whisper. Marco froze, his face draining of color. "What?" "Rebecca Carlton. How long have you been sleeping with her?" The silence that followed was deafening. Marco's shoulders slumped, and in that moment Laura saw the truth written across his face. She didn't need his stammered explanation or his weak attempts at justification. 8 months, he finally admitted, running his hands through his hair. "Laura, I can explain. It didn't mean anything. I made a terrible mistake." 8 months? Laura's voice cracked. "You've been having an affair for 8 months? While I was trying to get pregnant? While we were celebrating when it finally happened?" Marco stepped forward, reaching for her. "Please, Laura, we can work through this. I'll end it. I'll do anything. Don't touch me." Laura backed away, her heart pounding. "I have my 28-week checkup tomorrow. I was going to ask you to come, but now—" She pressed her hands against her temples, fighting back tears. "I can't even look at you. I'll go to the appointment. Please, let me be there. That's our baby." "No." Laura's voice was steel. "You lost that right the moment you decided to betray us. Both of us." The room spun slightly and Laura grabbed the counter for support. The stress, the shock, the betrayal. It was too much. She needed to get out of there. Needed to breathe. "I'm staying at Claire's tonight," she said, referring to her best friend who lived across town. "Don't try to contact me. I need time to think." Marco's face crumpled. "Laura, please. I love you. We can fix this." But Laura was already moving past him, her feet carrying her upstairs to pack a bag. Her hands shook as she stuffed clothes into her overnight case, her mind racing with questions and fears. How could she trust anything anymore? How could she raise a child with someone who had lied so easily for so long? As she drove through the familiar streets of their neighborhood, tears finally falling freely, Laura had no way of knowing that her world was about to shift even more dramatically. Tomorrow's medical appointment would reveal complications that would force her to confront not just her broken marriage but her very survival, and that of her unborn child. For now, though, she focused on breathing, on keeping the car steady, on making it to Claire's house where she could finally break down in safety. The late afternoon sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, a beautiful ending to a day that had shattered her entire world. The waiting room at Boston Women's Health Center felt colder than usual. Laura sat alone, her left hand instinctively covering her belly while her right clutched her medical folder. Around her, other expectant mothers chatted with their partners, their collective joy a stark contrast to the hollow feeling in her chest. A young couple across from her shared knowing smiles as they flipped through a baby name book, and Laura had to look away. Laura Davidson? A nurse in blue scrubs called her name, leading her down the sterile hallway to examination room 3. Dr. Catherine Reynolds entered moments later, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun. Her warm brown eyes immediately registered Laura's solitary presence. "Laura, is everything all right? I expected to see Marco today." "Marco won't be joining us anymore," Laura managed, her voice surprisingly steady despite the lump in her throat. "We're separating." Dr. Reynolds's expression softened as she sat down, placing a gentle hand on Laura's arm. "I'm so sorry, honey. Do you want to talk about it before we begin?" Laura shook her head, forcing herself to focus. "I just need to know my baby is healthy." The routine ultrasound started normally, the familiar whooshing sound of the baby's heartbeat filling the room. Laura watched the grainy black and white image of her daughter on the screen, trying to lose herself in that miraculous sight. But then Dr. Reynolds's expression changed, her brow furrowing as she studied the monitor more intently. "I'm seeing something concerning," she said carefully, adjusting the ultrasound wand. "Your placenta is showing signs of a condition called placenta accreta. It's rare, but it requires immediate attention." The medical terminology washed over Laura as Dr. Reynolds explained the situation. The placenta had grown too deeply into her uterine wall, a condition that could cause severe complications during delivery. Words like hemorrhage, emergency hysterectomy, and high-risk pregnancy stood out starkly against the background noise of the medical equipment. "We'll need to monitor you very closely," Dr. Reynolds concluded, her tone gentle but serious. "You'll require a planned C-section at 36 weeks, and we'll need a team of specialists present. I'm recommending immediate bed rest." Laura's hands trembled as she wiped the ultrasound gel from her stomach. "But my daughter, she'll be okay?" "With proper care and monitoring, yes. But Laura, you need support. Is there someone who can help you through this?" Tears welled up in Laura's eyes as she thought of her parents, gone 5 years now in the car accident that still haunted her dreams. But then Claire's determined face appeared in her mind, along with her older sister Rachel, who lived just outside the city. "Yes," she whispered. "I have people." Later that evening, as Laura sat in Claire's guest room making calls to work about medical leave, her phone buzzed with Marco's 23rd message of the day. She almost ignored it, but something made her read it. "Please, Laura. Olivia mentioned your appointment. Whatever's happening, you shouldn't go through it alone. Let me help." Laura's finger hovered over the delete button, but instead, she found herself typing, "The pregnancy is high risk. I need complete peace and no stress. That means no contact unless it's about the baby's health or legal matters. Please respect that." She set the phone face down on the nightstand and curled up on the bed, one hand resting protectively over her stomach. Through the window, she could see the lights of Boston twinkling in the distance. Somewhere out there was her old life, the one where she was a happily married woman expecting her first child. But that life was gone now. "It's just you and me, little one," she whispered to her unborn daughter, "and we're going to be okay. We have to be." Claire knocked softly before entering with a steaming mug of chamomile tea. "Rachel's on her. Way from Cambridge," she said, sitting beside Laura on the bed. "We're going to figure this out together, every single step of the way." Laura managed a weak smile, grateful for the warmth of the tea and the unwavering presence of her friend. Tomorrow she would begin making plans for divorce papers, for medical care, for a new future she never expected to face. But tonight, she allowed herself to grieve for the life she thought she would have, while gathering strength for the battles ahead. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of medical appointments and legal meetings. Laura sat in her sister Rachel's home office in Cambridge, surrounded by divorce papers and medical documents, trying to make sense of how her life had become an endless stream of signatures and decisions. The late March wind rattled the windows, matching her unsettled state of mind. "The terms are fair," Rachel explained, her legal background proving invaluable. "Full custody, substantial child support, and half of all assets. Marco's not contesting anything." She paused, studying her sister's face. He knows he has no grounds to fight. Laura nodded, absently rubbing her growing belly. Her daughter had been particularly active today, as if sensing the magnitude of the decisions being made. I just want it done. I need to focus on staying healthy until the C-section. Rachel gathered the papers into a neat pile. Dr. Reynolds called earlier. She's arranged for you to meet with the specialist team at Massachusetts General next week. I've already cleared my schedule to take you. You don't have to. Stop. Rachel's tone was firm but gentle. You're not alone in this. Claire's handling the sale of your house. I'm managing the legal side, and between us, we'll make sure you and my niece have everything you need. Tears welled in Laura's eyes, but for the first time in weeks, they weren't entirely from sadness. The baby kicked again, and she managed a small smile. She's going to have the best aunt and godmother ever. Speaking of which, Rachel hesitated. Marco's mother called me. She wants to see you. Laura's smile faded. Eleanor Davidson had always been kind to her, treating her like a daughter, rather than an in-law. The thought of facing her now with her marriage to Marco in shambles made her chest tight. I can't, Laura whispered. Not yet. It's too much. Rachel nodded understandingly. I'll handle it. You just focus on rest and staying stress-free. She glanced at her watch. Claire should be here soon with dinner. The realtor called her. There's already an offer on the house. The news should have been relieving, but Laura felt a fresh wave of grief. That house had been meant to be their family home. They'd spent months choosing the perfect nursery color, debating between soft yellow and gentle mint green. Now someone else would paint over their dreams, replace their memories with new ones. I found a small apartment in Brookline, Laura said, changing the subject. It's close to the hospital and has excellent schools nearby. Once the house sells. A sharp pain in her abdomen cut off her words. Laura gasped, clutching her stomach. Laura? Rachel was instantly at her side. What's wrong? I don't know. Laura breathed through the pain. It's probably nothing. Dr. Reynolds said some discomfort is normal. But Rachel was already reaching for her phone. We're not taking chances. I'm calling an ambulance. The next few hours passed in a haze of hospital monitors and concerned medical staff. Dr. Reynolds arrived quickly, her presence both reassuring and worrying. After a thorough examination, she delivered her verdict. It was a warning sign, she explained. The placenta is causing more complications than we initially thought. I'm admitting you for the remainder of your pregnancy. We need to monitor you and the baby, 24/7. Laura stared at the hospital ceiling, feeling the weight of this new reality settle over her. 6 more weeks of pregnancy, all of them to be spent in this sterile room. She thought of the apartment in Brookline, of all her careful plans now thrown into chaos. Rachel squeezed her hand. I'll handle everything. The house sale, the apartment, all of it. You just focus on keeping my niece safe. Later that night, alone in her hospital room, Laura watched the monitors tracking her baby's heartbeat. The steady rhythm was oddly comforting, a reminder that despite everything falling apart, something beautiful was still growing, still fighting to exist. We're fighters, aren't we, little one? She whispered, running her hand over her belly. And we're going to prove it to everyone. 3 weeks into her hospital stay, Laura had memorized every crack in the ceiling tiles above her bed. The monotony of her days was broken only by medical checks, visits from Rachel and Claire, and the constant rhythm of machines monitoring her and her baby's vital signs. April rain streaked the windows of her room at Massachusetts General, matching her melancholy mood. The television droned quietly in the background, providing white noise to mask the constant hospital sounds. Laura was flipping through a baby name book Claire had brought when a knock at the door made her look up. Her heart stopped when she saw Marco standing in the doorway, his suit wrinkled and his eyes haunted. What are you doing here? She asked, instinctively placing a protective hand over her belly. Marco held up a thick manila envelope. The final divorce papers. Your lawyer said they needed to be delivered in person. He hesitated. And I wanted to check on you. Both of you. Laura's first instinct was to tell him to leave, but exhaustion had worn down her anger to a dull ache. You could have had them messengered. I know. He remained in the doorway as if afraid to enter without permission. Dr. Reynolds called me. She said there were complications last week. I told her not to. I'm still listed as your emergency. Contact, he interrupted softly. They legally had to inform me. A moment of tense silence stretched between them, broken only by the steady beeping of the fetal monitor. Finally, Laura sighed. You might as well come in. The nurses will think it's strange if you keep standing there. Marco entered cautiously, placing the envelope on her bedside table. His eyes darted to the monitors, trying to make sense of the numbers and waves. Is she okay? The baby? She's fighting, Laura replied, unable to keep the pride from her voice. The doctors say she's strong, developing well despite everything. She didn't add that everything included the stress he had caused. Like her mother, Marco said quietly, and Laura felt tears threatening. She blinked them away, refusing to let him see her cry again. I've been thinking about names, she said, changing the subject. I want something strong, something with meaning. Marco nodded, his hands fidgeting with his tie. Your sister mentioned you found an apartment in Brookline. Yes, it's small, but... Laura broke off as a sharp pain shot through her abdomen. The monitors began beeping more rapidly. Marco's face paled. Should I call someone? No. Laura breathed through the discomfort, the way her nurses had taught her. It happens sometimes. The doctors say it's normal with my condition. The pain subsided, but Marco remained tense, hovering uncertainly. I've been seeing someone, he blurted out. A therapist, I mean. Trying to understand why I destroyed everything good in my life. Laura looked at him then, really looked at him for the first time since he'd entered. The polished lawyer she'd married was gone, replaced by someone who seemed smaller, more vulnerable, but she couldn't afford to care about his journey of self-discovery. Her focus had to be on survival, hers and her daughter's. I hope it helps you, Marco, but I can't be part of your healing process. I need to focus on mine. He nodded, understanding in his eyes. Of course, I want you to know that whatever you need, whenever you need it, I'm here. No strings attached, no expectations. Just help, if you want it. Before Laura could respond, her afternoon nurse bustled in. Time for your checkup, Mrs. Davidson. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had a visitor. He was just leaving, Laura said quietly. The papers are signed? Marco nodded, already backing toward the door. Everything's there. Take care of yourself, Laura, and thank you for letting me see you. After he left, the nurse checked Laura's vitals, chatting cheerfully about the improving spring weather. But Laura barely heard her, lost in thoughts of the past and the future. Her daughter kicked, a strong movement that made the monitor jump. Still fighting, little one? Laura whispered once she was alone again. Good, because Mommy's going to need all the strength she can get. She picked up the name book again, but her eyes drifted to the manila envelope. Inside were the papers that would officially end her marriage, but they would also mark the beginning of something new, a life where she made all the decisions, where she could be both mother and father to her daughter. It was terrifying and empowering all at once. Outside her window, the April rain had stopped, and a weak sun was breaking through the clouds. Laura watched the light change, thinking about strength and forgiveness, and the different shapes healing could take. The morning of May 15th dawned clear and bright, but Laura barely noticed the perfect spring weather outside her hospital window. Today was the day, 36 weeks exactly, and her planned C-section was scheduled for noon. She'd barely slept, spending most of the night watching the monitors and talking softly to her daughter. Mrs. Davidson, a young nurse entered, checking the monitors. The surgical team will be here in an hour to prep you. Are you ready? Laura nodded, her throat too tight for words. Rachel sat beside her, already dressed in medical scrubs she'd be wearing in the operating room. As her designated support person, She hadn't left Laura's side since arriving at dawn. "The team is excellent," Rachel assured her, squeezing her hand. "Dr. Reynolds has assembled the best specialists in Boston." A sharp knock at the door made them both look up. Dr. Reynolds entered, followed by a team of medical professionals. "Good morning, Laura. Let's talk through everything one more time." The doctor's explanation was interrupted by another knock. This time it was Claire, her eyes red from crying. "I'm sorry I'm late. Traffic was horrible." She rushed to Laura's other side, completing the circle of support Laura had come to rely on. The next hour passed in a blur of preparations. Laura tried to focus on Dr. Reynolds' voice as she explained the procedure again, but her mind kept drifting to the risks. They discussed severe bleeding, possible hysterectomy. The words echoed in her head like a warning bell. "Laura?" Dr. Reynolds touched her arm gently. "It's time." The journey to the operating room felt surreal. The fluorescent lights above seemed too bright, the corridor too long. Rachel walked beside her bed, still holding her hand, while Claire waited behind to handle any necessary paperwork. In the operating room, the team worked with practiced efficiency. Laura felt strangely detached as they positioned her, placed the spinal block, hung the blue surgical drape. Rachel's steady presence beside her head was her only anchor to reality. "Okay, Laura." Dr. Reynolds' voice came from behind the drape. "We're starting now. You'll feel some pressure, but no pain. Just focus on your breathing." Laura closed her eyes, concentrating on the rhythmic beeping of the monitors. She thought about the nursery waiting in her new apartment, painted the soft mint green she'd chosen herself. She thought about the future, about first steps and first words, about, "There's more bleeding than we anticipated," someone said sharply. The room's energy shifted instantly. "BP's dropping," another voice called out. "Laura, stay with us," Dr. Reynolds commanded. "We're almost there." Rachel's grip on her hand tightened. "You're doing great, little sister. Just hold on." The pressure in her abdomen increased and Laura felt a tugging sensation. The room seemed to spin slightly, the lights above blurring into streaks of white. And then, a cry. Strong and clear and perfect. "She's here," Dr. Reynolds announced. Time of birth 12:17 p.m. Laura tried to focus on her daughter's cries, but the room was starting to fade around the edges. She could hear urgent voices, medical terms she didn't understand. Rachel's face above her looked scared. "Laura? Laura, stay with us." Dr. Reynolds' voice seemed to come from very far away. "We need to control this bleeding. Get 2 more units of blood up here, stat." "The baby," Laura managed to whisper. "Is she okay?" "She's perfect," Rachel assured her, but her voice cracked. 5 pounds, 8 ounces of perfect. You did it, Laura. You just need to hold on a little longer. Laura wanted to respond, but darkness was creeping in at the edges of her vision. The last thing she heard was her daughter's strong cry, a sound full of life and promise before everything faded to black. When she opened her eyes again, the first thing she noticed was the soft beeping of monitors, different from the ones she'd lived with for weeks. The room was dim, lit only by the glow of medical equipment. Rachel was slumped in a chair beside her bed, holding something small wrapped in a pink blanket. "Hey," Laura whispered, her voice rough. Rachel's head snapped up, tears immediately, filling her eyes. "Oh, thank God." She stood carefully, cradling her precious bundle. "Someone's been waiting to meet you properly." And there she was, tiny and perfect, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold all the wisdom in the world. Laura's arms shook as she reached for her daughter, but Rachel helped position them both safely. "Sophia," Laura breathed, the name she'd chosen weeks ago finally feeling real. Sophia Rachel Davidson. Her daughter yawned, tiny fingers flexing against the blanket, and Laura felt her heart expand with a love so fierce it took her breath away. In that moment, every struggle, every pain, every tear had been worth it. Sophia was here. She was healthy, and they were both alive. They were survivors, they were fighters, and they were just beginning. 2 months after Sophia's birth, Laura stood in her Brookline apartment's kitchen, gently swaying as she heated a bottle with one hand while holding her sleeping daughter against her shoulder. The morning sun streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow across the small but cozy space she now called home. "Almost ready, sweet girl," she whispered, testing the milk temperature on her wrist. Sophia stirred slightly, making the tiny snuffling sounds that never failed to melt Laura's heart. A soft knock at the door announced Rachel's arrival for their daily morning check-in. "Look who's already mastering the one-handed bottle prep," her sister said admiringly, setting down a bag of groceries. "Necessity is quite the teacher," Laura replied with a tired smile. The physical recovery from Sophia's birth had been challenging, but the emotional healing was proving to be an even longer journey. The realtor called yesterday. The house sale is finally closing next week. Rachel paused in unpacking the groceries. "How do you feel about that?" Laura looked down at Sophia's peaceful face, considering the question. "Ready? It feels like the last tie being cut, you know? The final piece of that life being packed away. And Marco? Has he—" "His lawyer sent the child support documents," Laura interrupted, not wanting to dwell on her ex-husband. "Everything's set up. He's respecting my boundaries, keeping communication strictly about Sophia and legal matters." Rachel nodded, but Laura caught the concerned look in her eyes. They both knew Marco had been asking about visiting his daughter. Laura had delayed making that decision, focusing instead on establishing a routine with Sophia and healing from her near-death experience during the birth. The bottle warmer beeped, and Laura moved to the living room to feed Sophia. The nursery, painted in the soft mint green she'd chosen, was visible through the open door. It was smaller than the one she'd planned in her old house, but it was filled with more love than she'd thought possible. "I have to go back to work next month," Laura said quietly, watching Sophia's tiny hands curl around the bottle. "The medical bills, even with the insurance and Marco's support. Have you thought about my offer?" Rachel asked, sitting beside them. "The law firm is still looking for a paralegal. The hours are flexible and you'd be working with me." Laura had considered it. Before her marriage, she'd worked as a legal assistant, but had left the field when Marco's career took off. The idea of returning to it now, as a single mother, was both terrifying and oddly appealing. "I don't know if I'm ready," she admitted. "Everything still feels so raw." "You're stronger than you think," Rachel said firmly. "Look at what you've already accomplished. You survived a high-risk pregnancy, a life-threatening delivery, and you're raising this beautiful girl on your own. You're not just surviving anymore, Laura. You're thriving." Sophia finished her bottle, and Laura gently moved her to her shoulder for burping. The familiar motion brought comfort, a reminder that amid all the uncertainty, some things were beautifully simple. "I got another card from Eleanor yesterday," Laura said, referring to Marco's mother. She included new pictures of herself. She wants Sophia to know her grandmother even from a distance. And maybe it's time. Not for Marco, not yet, but for Eleanor. Sophia deserves to know the family members who truly want to be in her life. The morning light had shifted, creating patterns on the hardwood floor. Laura watched them dance, remembering how lost she'd felt just months ago. Now, holding her daughter, surrounded by the life she was building piece by piece, she felt something she hadn't expected. Hope. "I think I'll take that job," she said, finally. "You're right. It's time to do more than just survive." Rachel smiled, reaching out to stroke Sophia's dark hair. "That's my sister. Always stronger than she knows." Laura looked around her small apartment at the mix of old and new, at the life she was crafting from the ashes of her old one. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was hers, and with Sophia in her arms, it was more than enough. 10 years had passed like pages turning in a book, each chapter bringing new joys and challenges. Laura sat at her desk in Rachel's law firm, reviewing case files when her cell phone lit up with a message from Sophia's school. Her heart skipped a beat. Middle-of-the-day calls were never good news. "Mrs. Davidson?" Sophia's teacher, Mrs. Henderson, sounded hesitant. Could you come to the school? There's been an incident. Sophia's okay, but we need to discuss something. 30 minutes later, Laura found herself in the school counselor's office, facing her 10-year-old daughter who sat with shoulders slumped, dark hair hiding her face. The family tree project she'd been working on lay crumpled on the desk between them. She refused to complete the assignment, Mrs. Henderson explained gently. When Christopher Matthews made a comment about her not having a father to include Sophia, well, she threw her textbook at him. Laura's heart clenched. They'd had a similar incident last month when Sophia's friend Ashley talked about her dad, teaching her to ride a bike. The questions were becoming more frequent, the absences more noticeable. Can I talk to my daughter alone? Laura asked. Once the teachers left, she moved to kneel beside Sophia's chair. Want to tell me what happened? Sweetheart? Sophia lifted her head, revealing eyes bright with unshed tears, eyes that looked so much like Marco's it sometimes took Laura's breath away. Why doesn't he want to know me, Mom? Is it because I did something wrong? Oh, baby, no. Laura pulled her daughter into a tight embrace. You've never done anything wrong. The situation with your father, it's complicated. That's what you always say. Sophia pulled away, frustration evident in her voice. But I'm not a baby anymore. I deserve to know. Everyone else has a dad. Even kids with divorced parents see their dads on weekends. Why don't I? Laura took a deep breath, remembering her therapist's advice about age-appropriate honesty. She'd known this day was coming, had prepared for it, but now that it was here, the words stuck in her throat. Your father, she began carefully. He made some mistakes before you were born. Mistakes that hurt me very deeply. I needed to protect myself. And you, by creating some distance. But what if he's changed? Sophia's voice was small. Grandma, Eleanor always says people can change. The mention of Eleanor made Laura pause. Over the years, she'd maintained a careful relationship with Marco's mother, allowing her to be part of Sophia's life through letters, phone calls, and carefully supervised visits. Eleanor had respected Laura's boundaries while ensuring Sophia knew she was loved by her grandmother. You're right, Laura said finally. People can change. And maybe it's time we talk about your father more openly. Would you like that, even with the insurance and Marco's support? Have you thought even with the insurance and... Sophia nodded eagerly, wiping her eyes. Does he know what I look like? Does he know I made the honor roll? That I play soccer? He knows, Laura admitted. Through Eleanor and the occasional updates Laura's lawyer provided, Marco had been kept informed of Sophia's major milestones. He sends cards for your birthday and Christmas through his lawyer. I've never seen them. I kept them, Laura said quietly. In a box at home. I thought when you were older you might want to read them. Sophia's eyes widened. Can we read them tonight? Laura studied her daughter's hopeful face, seeing the same determination she'd inherited from both her parents. Yes, tonight we'll start talking about your father. Really talking, but Sophia? She waited until her daughter met her eyes. No more throwing books, okay? A small smile finally appeared on Sophia's face. Okay. But Mom? Christopher really was being a jerk. Laura laughed softly, pulling her daughter close again. That's still no excuse for violence. Come on, let's get you back to class. We have a lot to talk about tonight. As they walked back to Sophia's classroom, Laura felt the weight of the years of careful silence about Marco. She'd protected her daughter the only way she knew how, but perhaps it was time for a different kind of protection, one that came from understanding rather than absence. That evening, Laura sat cross-legged on her bedroom floor, a weathered shoebox in front of her. Sophia mirrored her position, watching intently as Laura lifted the lid. Inside, organized by date, were 10 years' worth of unopened envelopes, each one containing a piece of the father Sophia had never known. There's so many, Sophia whispered, running her fingers over the neat stack. Laura selected the first envelope, postmarked just weeks after Sophia's birth. Her hands trembled slightly as she broke the seal, Would you like to read it or should I? You read it, Sophia said, hugging her knees to her chest. Please. Laura unfolded the letter, the paper crisp despite its age. Marco's familiar handwriting filled the page. Dear Sophia, you're just 3 weeks old today. Your grandmother showed me a picture of you sleeping in your nursery, and I've never seen anything more perfect. The doctors say you're strong and healthy just like your mother. I want you to know that even though I'm not there, I think about you every day. I dream about the sound of your first laugh. Wonder what your first word will be. Laura's voice caught. Sophia leaned against her, providing unexpected comfort. Keep going, Mom. The next letter was from Sophia's first birthday. My darling daughter, you're walking now. Your grandmother told me you took your first steps last week. I imagine you toddling around, discovering the world with that fearless spirit babies have. I hope you know that every milestone, every achievement brings joy to my heart even from afar. They read through the years. Sophia's first day of kindergarten, her 7th birthday when she lost her first tooth, her first soccer game. Marco had marked each moment with words full of love and regret, pride and longing. He never forgot anything, Sophia said softly, holding a recent letter describing how proud he was of her honor roll achievement. But Mom, if he cares this, Hutch, why didn't he fight harder to see me? Laura closed her eyes, memories washing over her. Sometimes when people know they've done wrong, they try to respect the boundaries others set, even when it breaks their heart. Your father, he knew I needed space to heal, to raise you without the complications of our past. Do you still need that space? Sophia's question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Before Laura could answer, they came across a letter that made her pause. It was dated just 2 months ago, and unlike the others, it was addressed to her. Laura, Sophia turns 11 next month. Every year I've honored your wishes, staying in the background, watching our daughter grow through photographs and secondhand stories. But recently, I've been having health issues. Nothing critical yet, but it's made me realize how much time I've lost. I'm not asking to disrupt the life you've built, but if there's any chance Sophia might want to know me, I'm ready to do whatever you think is best. I've spent these years trying to become someone worthy of being her father. Marco. Laura felt Sophia's hand slip into hers. Mom, are you crying? She hadn't realized tears were falling until Sophia pointed it out. Happy tears, I think. Sometimes life gives us second chances when we least expect them. Does this mean? Sophia hesitated, hope flickering in her eyes. Could I meet him? Just once? Laura pulled her daughter close, breathing in the lavender scent of her shampoo. The past decade had been about protection, about healing, about building a fortress around their little family of 2. But looking at the letters scattered around them, physical proof of a father's enduring love, she wondered if perhaps the greatest protection now would be letting down those walls just a little. Yes, she whispered, surprising herself with how right it felt. I think it's time, but we'll do it carefully, okay? Step by step. Sophia's smile lit up the room. Step by step, she agreed, gathering the letters with reverent care. Can we read more? As the night deepened around them, mother and daughter continued to piece together their history through Marco's words, building a bridge across 10 years of silence. The Boston Public Garden buzzed with weekend activity, but Laura hardly noticed the crowds as she sat on a bench near the swan boats, her hand firmly clasped in Sophia's. They had arrived 20 minutes early, Laura's attempt to calm her daughter's nervous energy, though her own heart raced just as fast. What if he doesn't like me? Sophia whispered, smoothing her favorite blue dress for the 100th time. What if I'm not what he expected? Laura turned to face her daughter, taking in the worried crease between her brows, so like Marco's that it made her chest tight. Impossible. You're more than anyone could expect, sweet girl. Just be yourself. Rachel stood nearby, providing silent support while trying to appear casual about watching every approaching figure. They had agreed she would stay within sight, but give them space for this moment. The early October breeze rustled through trees, painted in autumn colors, sending leaves dancing around their feet. "Is that him?" Sophia's grip tightened as a tall figure approached from the bridge. Laura nodded, her throat suddenly dry. Marco looked different from her memories. His hair now streaked with gray at the temples, his face more lined. He carried a small gift bag and moved with the careful steps of someone approaching a wild animal they didn't want to startle. Time seemed to slow as he reached them. Sophia stood, unconsciously pressing against Laura's side. For a moment, father and daughter simply stared at each other, both searching for traces of themselves in the other's face. "Hello, Sophia." Marco's voice was rough with emotion. "I've waited so long to meet you." Sophia glanced at Laura, who gave her an encouraging nod. "Hi," she managed, her voice small but steady. I read your letters." Marco's eyes filled with tears. "You did? I hoped. I wasn't sure if—" "Mom kept them all," Sophia continued, gaining confidence. "Even the ones about my soccer games. Do you really watch them sometimes?" Marco nodded, sinking onto the bench across from them. "From the far side of the field. I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable, but I couldn't bear to miss seeing you play. You're amazing out there, so fast and fearless." "Like Mom," Sophia said loyally, and Laura felt her heart swell. "Yes," Marco agreed softly. "Exactly like your mother." He held out the gift bag. "I brought you something. It's not much, but—" Sophia looked to Laura again, receiving another nod before accepting the bag. Inside was a handmade photo album, its cover decorated with pressed flowers. As Sophia opened it, Laura caught glimpses of childhood photos she'd never seen. Marco's own baby pictures, school photos, family vacations. "I thought you might like to know where some of your traits come from," Marco explained. "Your grandmother helped me put it together. That curl in your hair, that's from my side, but your smile, that's all Laura." Sophia traced a photo of young Marco holding a soccer trophy. "You played too?" "Midfielder all through high school and college. I always wondered if you'd love the game as much as I did." The tension began to ease as Sophia peppered Marco with questions about the photos, about his childhood, about the family traits they shared. Laura watched them, noting how Sophia's gestures mirrored Marco's unconsciously, how their laughs held the same musical note. Rachel appeared quietly at Laura's side. "You okay?" she whispered. Laura nodded, surprised to find she meant it. Watching, Sophia discovered this missing piece of herself was like watching a flower unfold in the sun, beautiful and natural and right. "Mom?" Sophia's voice brought her back to the moment. "Can we walk to the duck pond? Marco, says there's a family of ducklings that just hatched." The word, Dad, hung in the air between them, Sophia's face flushing as she realized what she'd said. But Marco's gentle smile and Laura's steady presence created a safe space for this new reality they were building. "Of course," Laura said, standing. "We can all go." As they walked, Sophia between them like a bridge connecting past and present, Laura realized that healing sometimes came in unexpected ways. Today wasn't about her and Marco. It was about Sophia finding another piece of her story, another source of love in her life. 6 months after that first meeting in the public garden, Laura sat in the bleachers watching Sophia's soccer championship game. The spring sun warmed her face as she observed her daughter darting across the field, her blue jersey a blur of motion. Marco sat several rows away with Eleanor, respecting the careful boundaries they'd established during their monthly family counseling sessions. The past months had brought changes none of them had expected. Sophia's relationship with Marco had grown steadily, nurtured by weekend visits, soccer practices, and quiet conversations over hot chocolate at the cafe near his office. Laura had watched her daughter bloom with this new connection, filling in empty spaces she hadn't even known existed. "Go, Sophia!" Eleanor's voice rang out as Sophia stole the ball from an opposing player. Laura smiled, remembering how nervous she'd been about involving Marco's mother more directly in their lives. But Eleanor had proved to be a steady presence, never pushing, always grateful for whatever time she was given with her granddaughter. Sophia streaked down the field, her face set in concentration. Laura recognized that expression. It was the same one she'd worn during her pregnancy, fighting for both their lives, the same determination that had carried them through 10 years of building a life together. "She's going to score," Marco said quietly, having moved closer during Laura's reflection. "She has that look." As if hearing him, Sophia pulled back her leg and sent the ball sailing past the goalkeeper. The crowd erupted, but Laura barely heard them. She was watching Sophia's face as their daughter searched the bleachers, beaming at both her parents with uncontained joy. After the game, which Sophia's team won 3-1, they gathered at their usual spot near the concession stand. Sophia, still, flushed with victory, bounced between them, her medal glinting in the sunlight. "Did you see that goal? Dad's been helping me practice that kick for weeks." She caught herself, glancing anxiously at Laura. "I mean, it's okay," Laura said softly, meaning it. "He is your dad." The words no longer carried the weight of past pain. Instead, they were simply a statement of fact, one that brought her daughter happiness. Eleanor approached with a camera. "How about a picture of the three of you, to mark the occasion?" Laura hesitated only briefly before nodding. Sophia positioned herself between them, her smile radiant. As Eleanor counted down, Laura felt the familiar ache in her chest transform into something new. Not quite forgiveness, but acceptance. Acceptance of the past, of change, of the complex ways love could evolve. "Mom?" Sophia's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Can we get ice cream? Dad knows a place that makes sundaes as big as your head." "That sounds perfect," Laura agreed, watching Sophia skip ahead with Eleanor. Marco lingered behind with her, his expression thoughtful. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving me the chance to know her, for letting me try to be the father she deserves." Laura considered his words, remembering the young woman she'd been, shattered by betrayal and fighting for survival. She thought, of all the letters in that shoebox, of Sophia's face lighting up when she talked about soccer practice with her dad, of the careful way Marco had respected every boundary she'd set. "We've all grown," she replied finally. "Sometimes the hardest things to forgive lead us exactly where we need to be." They walked together toward the ice cream shop, maintaining a comfortable distance. Ahead, Sophia was animatedly describing her winning goal to Eleanor, her hands gesturing wildly. Laura watched her daughter, their daughter, and felt at peace with the journey that had brought them here. Life hadn't turned out the way she'd planned 11 years ago, but maybe it had turned out exactly as it should. Sophia had both. Her parents' love, Marco had found redemption in fatherhood, and Laura had discovered that true strength sometimes meant letting go of old pain to make room for new joy. As Sophia ran back to grab both their hands, pulling them forward with infectious enthusiasm, Laura realized that some stories didn't need perfect endings. They just needed real ones, filled with truth and growth and hope for tomorrow.
This story reminds us that life's greatest challenges can lead to the most unexpected transformations. Laura's strength shows us the power of resilience, forgiveness, and the courage to create a brighter future. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to join us for more powerful tales from the True Crime Studio. Thank you for watching, and may your days be filled with strength, hope, and endless joy. See you in the next story.